The beautiful spring came, and when nature resumes her loveliness, the human soul is apt to revive also. Harriet Ann Jacobs. Hi friends, welcome back to my channel and to the start of another vlog. So I'm really excited for this vlog because this week I'm planning to do a spring inspired reading and cozy hobby vlog. And so this week I'm planning to read a book that I've been wanting to read since last year, so I'm really excited to finally be getting to it. It is a book that has a cover that is gorgeous and that just screams cozy cottagecore vibes to me. And that book is The Hedgewitch of Foxhall by Anna Bright. So here's the cover, which I think is gorgeous. There's like a little dragon there that just like blends in with her hair. And then on the back is a really cute little fox. And so this is a YA romantasy. I'm just going to read like the little blurb on the top inside flap. So it says, a prince who hates magic, a prince who has spent his life hiding from it, a witch who is determined to protect it. And so in addition to reading this week, I also want to do some spring inspired baking, a spring inspired arts and craft, and also start a puzzle. So without further ado, I'm going to go start reading this. So after reading a little bit of my book, I decided to make some cookies. And I had stumbled upon online a recipe for these oddish Pokemon cookies that looked super cute. And so I decided to make those, and mine did not turn out as cute as the ones in the picture, but they were kind of cute. However, when I went to try one, the taste of them wasn't really to my liking. So they're not very sweet, and the recipe had said they were blueberry cookies, and they had blueberry jam in it, but I couldn't really taste it, but maybe the jam was just there more for coloring than anything else. However, there is also food dye in the cookies for coloring as well, and on that note, I do think I added too much food dye to my cookies, so the coloring is a little off from what it's supposed to be. But the recipe did say they were a less sweet cookie, so just personally, they weren't my type of cookie, but like with reading, everyone's tastes are different, so I will post a link for the recipe down below if you want to check them out for yourself. And even though I wasn't like a big fan of how they tasted, I still had fun making them, and I like trying out new recipes because it's always fun. And the only downside is that you don't exactly know how it's gonna turn out, and sometimes it's a hit and sometimes it's a miss. Hi, so it is now Wednesday, and I am here with a reading update, which is I have finished The Hedgewitch of Foxhall. I finished reading this morning. And I did film a reading update on Monday once I made it 100 pages into this with my first thoughts. But I was looking at those clips yesterday and my audio is no good, so I'm just going to give all my thoughts now in this clip. So let me tell you a little bit about what this is about, and then I'll share my thoughts. So this book follows 3 characters and is told in first-person perspective. And the first character we are introduced to is Fionn. She's our main female character, and she is a witch. And Fionn lives in the town of Foxhall, and in that town there's an infamous coven of witches. And if you're a witch, when you come of age, you end up joining the Foxhall coven. But Fionn refused to join them because she doesn't agree with how they practice magic. So everyone's magic in this book comes from the earth and the animals in nature. And so Fionn performs magic by using little pieces of nature, and she puts in a lot of physical work as well. But the Foxhall Coven, they use large pieces of nature and don't really put in any physical work at all in their spell work. And so they'll sacrifice a bunch of trees or a bunch of animals just for one spell. And that in itself is like really wasteful. And you learn at the beginning of the book that magic is disappearing from the land because of deforestation and nature being ruined by humans. And so the Foxhall Coven is not helping matters with the way that they perform their magic. In the Foxhall Coven, they don't help the people in the town that actually need help. They have days where you can line up for a penny and then they will hear your pleas, but they hardly ever help any of the normal townsfolk. And instead, they help rich people because the rich people can give them greater payments. And so Fionn also doesn't agree with that, and she actually goes around and helps the townspeople for like little to no fee. And the final straw for Fionn is at the beginning of the book, they sacrifice a part of the forest for one of their spells, and unfortunately, Fionn's fox familiar ends up getting caught up in the spell and he dies. And so Fionn is devastated, and she goes to confront the coven, and when she goes there, she ends up running into one of our other main characters, Taliesin. So our second main character is Taliesin, or Tal, and he is the younger son of the king. And he has come to the Foxhall Coven for help because he is on a quest to destroy a wall that was created by an enemy kingdom. And this wall is made of earth, and his father believes if it is destroyed, magic will return to Wales. And so his father, the king, said that whoever destroys the wall first and restores magic to the kingdom will be the one who will become his heir to be the next king. And Taliesin himself is an illegitimate child of the king, and the king has always favored his older brother David, so he sees this as a chance to finally step out from his brother's shadow and to finally gain the respect of his father. And speaking of David, he is our third main character, and so he is the firstborn child of the king, but he does not want to become king, and he actually fears magic. He just wants to be left alone, and he wants to live a normal life, and so he has kind of distanced himself from his father and from his princely duties, and he spends his days working as a blacksmith instead. And so the Foxhall, they refuse to help Taliesin, but Fionn agrees to help him instead. And Fionn does this partly as a way to get back at the Foxhall for killing her familiar, but also because she believes that if she can return magic to the land, then she'll be able to bring back her familiar. And so our story goes from there. So now for my thoughts. So I ended up really enjoying this book. I will say at the beginning, it took me a little bit to get into it because the book does just kind of throw you into the story and into the world, and you kind of have to figure out things as you go along. But by 100 pages into the book, I felt fully immersed into the story, and I felt invested in the story, and I didn't want to put the book down at that point. And there's a little blurb on the cover that says, "The witch who might save the throne, the princess who might steal her heart." And that kind of makes you think that, like, the romance in this is at the forefront. But actually, I would say that this is more of a fantasy with romance in it as opposed to a romantasy. And the romance is there, but it's really a small part of the story. And I feel like the romance was actually, like, my least favorite part of the story. I just felt like there were so many more interesting things going on. And there is a love triangle, so you could probably tell anyways by this little blurb that says the princes who might steal her heart. So yeah, there is a love triangle between the two princes and Fionn. But I didn't really mind the love triangle. It didn't feel annoying or anything. It's one of those love triangles that you can kind of tell from the beginning who she's going to end up with, because there is a certain character out of the two princes that she does spend like most of the book with and spends more time with than the other prince. That being said, I think all three of the characters, Fionn, David, and Taliesin, they are all like really well developed main characters, and they all have things that they have to work on and overcome, and by the end of the book you can see like their character growth. And so the love triangle in this book is used more as a way for these characters to figure out who they want to be, who they are, and what they want out of life, rather than just being like there for drama. I will say that I did favor one prince over the other because his character is just the character type that I like better. And even the person like that loses in the love triangle still gets like a happy ending, and you get like hints towards who they might end up with instead. And I actually think that person will actually suit them better than Fionn would have. And I don't think I mentioned this yet, but this is a standalone. and everything was tied up nice at the end. And one of my favorite parts about this book was the world building and the magic system. So in this world, there used to be a bunch of magical creatures, but you learn at the beginning that they've all kind of disappeared because magic is dying. And so there were dragons and unicorns and other creatures from Welsh mythology, and I just found it really fascinating to learn about all those different creatures. I love the depiction of the magic system in this book and how closely related to nature it is. And the magic feels whimsical, but it can also feel dark depending on who is using it. And I loved Fion's magic in particular. And when she performs the magic, she sings silly little songs and she wraps like ivory around her leg. So in that way, it seems very whimsical and almost a little silly, but also you see like all the hard work that she puts into performing her magic. Like she goes around and collects all these different pieces of nature, and she's like often covered in dirt and everything. And I feel like the way that she practices magic really reflects upon her character as well, and shows how she, unlike the Foxhall coven, really respects nature. Speaking of Fionn, she was another one of my favorite parts of this book. I just loved her as a character. I loved how headstrong she was, how fiery she was. I just always looked forward to seeing her perform magic in this book because every time she did it, it was a little different than the time before. And so I just found it fascinating to see how she would use her magic. So those are all my thoughts on the Hedgewitch of Foxhall. I am giving this 4 stars. So since it is only Wednesday and I already finished my book, I am going to start a new book. I am going to now read something very different from what I just read because I'm going to pick up a contemporary romance, which I don't think I've read a contemporary romance in like months. But I do like to read them on occasion. And so the book I'm going to read is The Strawberry Patch Pancake House by Laurie Gilmore, she is the author of The Pumpkin Spice Cafe, and this is a part of that series. But it does say that you can read them as standalones, and I've only read The Pumpkin Spice Cafe, and there are 2 books after that before this one. But I decided I'm going to pick this up because the cover and the title are just screaming spring vibes to me. And for whatever reason, like when I think of spring, I think of strawberries. And so the fact that this one's called the Strawberry Patch Pancake House is just giving me spring vibes. And also right now on Kindle, it's only $1.99. So I think I'm going to check that one out. And I did overall enjoy the Pumpkin Spice Cafe. My only problem with that book was that there was a lot of spice towards the end, like all at once, just like thrown at me. And so that was really the only thing that I didn't really like. So hopefully this one like spaces out the spice seeds better. Before doing any more reading, I decided to do a spring inspired arts and craft. I decided to make a cute pressed flower lantern, and I had stumbled across this craft a couple of years ago on Pinterest and saved it with the plan of eventually trying it out, and so I finally did, and I was really happy with the results. I would definitely recommend this craft if you're looking for a rather simple, quick, and cute DIY craft. And it doesn't require many supplies, just a small glass jar, pressed flowers, Mod Podge, twine, and a tea light. And I will link the tutorial I used down below if you are interested. So Friday, I had some time before work, so I decided to start my puzzle. And puzzling is something that's kind of new for me because while I did do some puzzles as a kid, I didn't do that many. And so like I kind of just got back into puzzling last year. And it was actually through watching Karen Puzzles videos on YouTube that I got back into puzzling. So I'm still very much a beginner puzzler and I'm a slow puzzler. And so I had time to work on it for about 40 minutes before I had to finish getting ready and leave for work. so I didn't get really far. All I really did was sort out all the pieces, and that's as far as I got. Hi, so it's now Sunday, April 13th, and I finished reading The Strawberry Patch Pancake House last night, so I'm here with my thoughts on that and to wrap up this vlog. So this book like surprised me in the best way possible. Like, I went into this book just expecting like a cute little romance with some steam. I wasn't expecting it to be amazing. I wasn't expecting it to blow me away. Like I mentioned earlier, I read the first book in the series and had a good enough time with it that I wanted to check out this one. This one I was really interested in checking out because the cover was giving me all the spring vibes. So when I first started this book, I wasn't quite feeling it, and I was like, oh no, maybe this was a mistake. Maybe I should have picked up another fantasy book and not a contemporary romance. But then I kept reading, and then at some point I was just having the best time with this book, and I remember looking down at my Kindle and I was like around the 40% mark. So the book was making me giddy, it was making me smile, it was giving me all the feelings and tugging at my heartstrings. And I actually just ended up loving this book. I was shocked because I wasn't expecting to love this book, but it gave me that 5-star feeling when I was reading it. And so here we are giving this book 5 stars. And I think there was a couple reasons why I enjoyed this one like a lot more than I enjoyed the Pumpkin Spice Cafe. So first, the characters. So we have our main female character, Iris, and then we have our male love interest, Archer. And Archer is a chef, and he's kind of grumpy, kind of cocky. Archer, for all of his life, has been very career-orientated. And so he has spent all his time, poured all his effort into becoming a chef, and up to this point he has worked in France. But he ends up leaving France to come to Dreen Harbor when he finds out that he has a 5-year-old daughter named Olive, and her mother has suddenly passed away, so he's coming to the town to take custody of her. And he has all the intentions in the world of taking her, getting her used to him so that he can gain approval to take custody of her, and then moving her back with him to France so he can continue his chef career there. But meanwhile, while he is in this town, he ends up becoming a chef for the diner that is there. And he ends up hiring Iris to be the nanny. And Iris, she doesn't consider herself a kid person. She's never wanted kids. She doesn't know the first thing about them. But she's in a pickle where she kind of isn't making meets end, and she can't afford to pay her rent this month. And then this opportunity pops up, and it's perfect because as a nanny, she's going to live in their house, so she won't have to pay rent. And so she'll be able to save up money from the nanny job and her other job that she still has as well. And then we have Archer's 5-year-old daughter, Olive, who is just absolutely adorable. She brings so much heart to the story, and just the relationship between her, Iris, and Archer, seeing it develop and progress just like tugged at my heartstrings so much, and like it made me emotional. In this book, like, it has a happy ending, but at the end, like, I just almost cried because I was just feeling so many emotions. And then that's the other thing that I liked a lot better in this book was the romance. Like, the romance between Iris and Archer, it just had my whole heart by the end of the book. I loved it so much. And I just love their dynamic. And there are plenty of cute moments between the two of them in this book, but there's also steam. That was one of my problems with the Pumpkin Spice Cafe, is that all the steam was at like the end of the book in that book, and I felt like some of it was just there for the sake of there being steam. And so I wasn't a big fan of that. But in this one, the steamy scenes are very well distributed like throughout the story, and I never felt like in this book that they were there just for the sake of being there. I feel like all the steamy scenes in this book developed and furthered the relationship between Iris and Archer. And one other thing I must mention is that, so I originally picked up this book because the cover was screaming spring to me, and I love strawberries, and I associate spring with strawberries. And so at the beginning there was some spring vibes with like the talk of Easter and spring, but then for like a while after that there wasn't really much spring vibes until we got to like the second half of the book. There was a mention of like a strawberry festival coming up, and that made me really excited, and so we do get that towards the end of the book, and so there were some more spring vibes there. Overall, I just feel like I felt more of a connection with these characters than I did with the main characters in the Pumpkin Spice Cafe, and I enjoyed this book so much that I will now definitely be picking up some of the other books in this series as well at some point. And I am especially now excited to pick up the Cinnamon Bun bookstore because the two main characters in that one, Noah and Hazel, are in this one more, and I really liked their little scenes in this one. So those are all my thoughts on the Strawberry Patch Pancake House. If you read this book, let me know what you thought about it, and if you read this and the Pumpkin Spice Cafe, let me know if you preferred this one over the Pumpkin Spice Cafe, because I'm really curious to know like other people's opinions about this one. Also, if you read The Hedgewitch of Foxhall, let me know what you thought about this one. That's pretty much it for this week's vlog. Thank you for watching, and I hope you'll join me in next week's vlog, which I'm really excited for because in that one I plan on reading my first Jane Austen book ever and also reading my first T. Kingfisher book. So once again, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye!